Hey YouTube, how's it going? Kevin Cleary here with a knife video for you. Today I have my full review and discussion of the Kershaw CQC 11K. This of course is one of the Kershaw Emerson collaborations, and probably most of you are quite familiar with this line of knives. They go all the way 1 through 11. A couple of standout examples would be of course the CQC 4K XL, which I've reviewed a year or so ago and was a very good knife. There are a couple of others that have been reasonably well done, although I will say this: if you're going to buy one of these knives, I would ask the seller to just check on blade centering, blade play, stuff like that, because there could potentially be some CQC issues with these knives. So just do your due diligence, but overall I think these are pretty decent, and they've been very popular for Kershaw. Okay, this line, and the reason you know they've been very popular is because they just keep coming out, right? So if Kershaw wasn't making money on these, they would not be making more and more of them, which they definitely are. So all that said, let's go ahead and take a look at this one specifically. This is the CQC 11K. It is based on an Emerson hunting knife design called the Rendezvous, and you've got that big, modified clip point blade, sort of that upswept tip, very Persian looking or scimitar looking sort of blade shape, which is pretty cool. Very large, comfortable handle. Overall, I can see this being a pretty popular knife, and especially popular for those who want something a little more hard use or even a little more tactical, but still want to stay in a more budget price range, okay? Size and weight on this guy: 8 5/8 inches overall, so that's all the way from the tip to the butt there. Blade length is 3 5/8, and the handle length, so when it's closed, is going to be just about exactly 5 inches. Very slim, so it carries pretty nicely in pocket. But it is a little hefty at 5.9 ounces. So 5.9 ounces, guys, here's what I'm going to say about that. Yes, it's heavy. It's not terrible for a knife of this size, and it's balanced out by the fact that this knife is fairly slim. Okay, so when you actually have this in pocket, it carries pretty comfortably, and I would actually argue that it carries more easily than even some knives that would be similar in size, but similar in size, yes, but weigh a little less, right? So it carries, it feels in pocket lighter than it is because it's so slim and fairly unobtrusive, which I do appreciate. So let's go ahead and talk about some of the specifics here, beginning with the blade, which is 8CR14 MOV steel with a hollow grind and a stone wash. Pretty thin behind the edge, and it's pretty thin stock in general. So you can see this is not super thick, and so when you add a hollow grind to that, I've got to tell you, this knife does slice really well. So if you're going to be doing anything that is going to involve kind of pushing through a lot of material, this blade is going to perform pretty well for you from a geometry standpoint. Now, being 8CR14 MOV steel, it's not going to perform well from an edge retention standpoint, although it's going to perform okay. All right, 8CR13 MOV is not terrible. It's not the end of the world, and for most people's EDC type of tasks, it's going to be more than sufficient. There are going to be some of you watching who use your folder like constantly for all kinds of things, and if that's you, then yeah, it's probably worth, if you're using your folder 5-10 times a day, you're cutting a lot of cardboard, you're opening a lot of packages, maybe you're cutting, straps in a warehouse, or you're cutting open bags of concrete or something else that's going to be really heavy wear on the edge of your blade, then in your case, yeah, it would be worth stepping up, spending a little extra money, and getting out of the budget steels, and that's going to include a bunch of budget steels. But if we're honest, for most of us, 8CR13 or 8CR14 MOV is going to be more than adequate, because we're going to pull our knife out 1 or 2 times a day. If we get a little light strop in the afternoon when we get home, we're not even going to have to sharpen it that often. Okay, so budget steel for sure, so it's not going to hold an edge forever. But in terms of the utility, this blade is pretty good. There is one limitation that it does have, and that is, this tip, because it's fairly obtuse in this angle, and because it's not even super thin here, this tip is not great for those kind of tasks where, you know, I'm sure we've all done this, where you kind of hold your knife like this and you're trying to open, let's say, a clamshell package, or, you know, cut into something with just the tip of the knife. It's not ideal for those kinds of tasks, but everything else, anything that involves using like the majority of the blade, it's going to perform very well, and has performed for me quite nicely in actual use. So no issue in terms of blade shape when it comes to general cutting tasks. The tip is a little big, as you can see, and that's just sort of natural for this blade style. And so that's maybe a minor limitation. It'll still get the job done, just not as nicely as some really fine pointed Spyderco or something like that. All right, let's see, anything else about the blade? Yeah, I actually normally, okay, let's back up and say this clearly. Normally, I don't love stonewash finishes, but in this case, because there's a bit of a contrast here, I can't say that I dislike the stonewash finish all that much. It actually seems to fit this knife fairly well. And definitely for budget steels and for knives that are trying to be a little harder use, I do prefer a hollow grind over a full flat grind. In fact, I generally prefer a hollow grind over a full flat grind because of the nicer edge geometry. Now, let's talk about lockup and deployment. It is a stainless steel frame lock with a wave feature and a thumb disc that is pretty typical for Emerson knives. Both work reasonably well. The lock bar is comfortable, it's easy to access, okay, so those are all important things. No lock bar stabilizer of any kind on this knife, which is interesting. Not that it's needed. The lock bar tension is high enough that, you know, you're not gonna very easily hyperextend this lock bar. The lockup is very late on this guy, but when it's steel on steel, that's not as big of an issue. When you get, you know, steel on titanium, yes, I would be very concerned about this late lockup, but with steel on steel, I'm not going to complain. Now, you know, a year down the road or something like that, or even 2 years, if you're using this every day and flipping it all the time, you could get some wear. And if you'd ever got to the point where it was, you know, not effective lockup anymore, it would be as simple as sending it to Kershaw, because whatever else you may say about Kershaw, and certainly I would say the last couple of years, I've been a little underwhelmed by Kershaw's offerings. They do have a great warranty, okay? And that's something that I really do appreciate about them, is they've always been excellent for me with any kind of warranty task that needs to be taken care of. Even stuff that doesn't need to be taken care of, they're very good. You know, I've asked them for all kinds of parts, and they've always been good to send things out very quickly, and whatever I basically ask for. So I've got to say, good warranty there. The washers here, so we've talked about the lock bar being a little late. We've talked about the stainless steel frame lock. I should point out here, it is stop pin, and it's kind of buried way down in there, so you can see the stop pin there. And it's Teflon washers. I don't know if we're going to be able to see that or not. You can kind of catch a glimpse of the white right there, although it's not amazing. Flashlight's in my pocket, so I'm not going to bother getting it out for this. You'll have to take my word for it that it's Teflon washers, and they're not huge Teflon washers, which I do like to see a bigger washer because it adds more stability. But having said all of that, side to side, up and down play, very, very solid knife. Now, I did ask the retailer to make sure that it was a solid knife, and as I said at the beginning, I would recommend, if you're buying any knife in a budget price point, you should do that, okay? You should say to the retailer, hey, check for blade play, check for centering, and I've never had a retailer tell me, hey, we're not doing that or something like that. They're always quite good to accommodate those kinds of requests. At least in my experience, they have been. So lockup and deployment, no big issue. Now I do want to talk about one point right now that I think you need to consider if you're looking at any waved knife, all right? And that is, depending on the knife, and I've had lots of knives with wave features on them, and generally they work fairly well. However, certain ones you have to pay a little more attention when you're taking them out of your pocket, and this is one of those. I've had knives where the wave feature is so effective that it catches every time you move the knife, and it opens, you know, whether you want it to or not, right? This is not that way. This one you have to be very intentional about making sure you catch that hook on your pocket when you're taking it out. And because of that, okay, let me get it close up here. So there's the hook I'm talking about. It's a little rounded. And so you have to make sure, and look at when the knife is closed, see how the way the handle extends here means that there's not a huge difference here. That's kind of a good thing, except you've got to be very intentional about making sure that catches on your pocket when you're extracting the knife, okay? And that's going to be true of most wave features. And I can tell you, for me, you know, I would carry this, yeah, a few times a week, you know, put it in a pocket. Even when I was walking around the house, I would sort of test the wave feature. And every time I would carry it, because I'm not carrying it every day, I would have to kind of relearn and just remind myself, hey, if you want this to open with the wave feature, you sort of got to extract it from your pocket this particular way. All right, so I say all that to say, if you're thinking, you know, in some kind of emergency situation, I've got this wave knife that's just going to fly open as soon as I pull it out of my pocket. That may or may not be the case, and if you're gonna count on it for that, you better make sure that you practice with it, okay? So that's my little discussion of wave features. I don't mind them, I don't love them, but if you're gonna use it, make sure that you very, you know, intentionally practice with it so that you know that you can extract it every time and get that knife to deploy. All right, let's talk about the handle now. So the handle construction is stainless steel liner lock on G10 show side with another steel liner here. Standoff construction. See those right there, which I do really like. I definitely like open pillar construction the most. There's no milling of any kind on here, which is certainly adding to the weight. And I will say this, you know, it would have been nice to see the stainless steel liner here done away with and just do G10 and steel. And that way you would save a lot more weight. And G10 is a very strong material. And even if you had to make it, you know, another fraction of an inch thicker to get the kind of strength you were wanting, you could have done that and, you know, maybe even been at a cheaper price point, because now you're kind of removing one of the steps in manufacturing and you're removing some of the material. You'd end up with a lighter knife and still one that functions very, very well. So I would have liked to see them drop the liner here on the G10 side, okay? Otherwise, though, I like this construction. I have no issue with it whatsoever. And in terms of ergonomics, everything is very comfortable. The jimping is reasonable. It could be a little bit sharper. See, as I'm moving my thumb there, like I can feel it, and it's definitely adding some grip, but it could have been even a little bit more. The G10 is grippy enough. In terms of, you know, long-term use or use when it's wet or dirty or you're sweating or something like that, you're going to have no issues with retention of that blade. And of course, you're definitely not sliding up onto that blade with any kind of pushing motion because of the fact that you've got that very good ramp and deep finger choil there. So ergonomics overall are quite good. You do have a movable Emerson clip, right side or left side tip up carry only. There's nothing up here for you to move it to a tip down carry. I'm not sure why you'd want to anyway, because it would completely negate the wave feature. So it doesn't make sense to have the tip up or the tip down options for carry on any of these Emerson collaboration knives. Overall, yeah, I have no issue with the handle construction or ergonomics. Fairly good all around on those points. So let's go ahead now and get to some comparisons. Now I've got a bunch of different budget knives here. Before I get all those, let's pull in a pair of two, just because this is such a well-known knife that it should give you a good idea of size, okay? So there's a pair of two. There's your CQC 11K. You can see it's quite a big knife. Now the handles are almost exactly the same size, even though you're getting much less blade on the pair of two. And often people have talked about and complained about the fact that the pair of two is fairly short. Here is a Rat Model 1, and I would say this is a close competitor. If you're looking for, you know, a hard use, outdoor use, tactical type of knife, certainly the Rat 1 would be a very good option and very comparable especially in the AUS 8 version in terms of performance and everything else. Probably, you know, what I would say about this is there's much more sort of styling and maybe interest happening here as compared to the Rat Model 1. Got another great budget folder. This is a flipper design, of course, but this is the cut jack, and I've often, you know, this is probably the best budget knife of 2017, and maybe even more than that. I really do like this knife. Obviously, it's much smaller, and you're not quite, I would say it's not as heavily built as this knife, but a great EDC option. What else have we got here? I don't have a lot of Kershaws. Let's grab, I do have a CQC 10K here that I think is worth comparing. And I'm gonna do a full comparison video between both of these knives. Both of them are pretty well done. The CQC 10K is just a little bit nicer all around. It deploys a little nicer, is considerably lighter. So those things are definitely worth noting. I'm gonna do a separate video on that though, so I'm not gonna say a whole lot at this point. And they are basically the same price. What haven't we shown you? Here is the rake P135 SF. Better steel, full stainless steel construction. So it's going to be about the same weight between these two. You know, this is going to be a little grippier and probably a little more suited to some harder use tasks because of the extra grip. This is not bad by any means, but it's just not quite there. And it is a little more expensive. So you're paying more, but you're definitely getting a higher level of quality, better blade steel, stuff like that. What else have we got? We've got another stainless steel frame lock here. So this is the Boker Lateralis. Great, great knife, G10. And here's one where they did do just the G10 and the stainless steel. And this knife, even though it's similar in size, it's a little smaller, but it's much lighter. Okay, it's a very, very noticeable difference in weight because they dropped the stainless steel and they did mill this out to save some weight. The steel is better too. The D2 steel over here is very, very good. I mean, not very, very good, but it's much better than the 8CR 13 MOV or 8CR 14 MOV on the Kershaw. What else have I got? Oh, one more Kershaw to show you. Let's go ahead and grab the Kershaw Knockout. This is a limited edition in the forest green and Damascus, but I wanted to, since I don't have many Kershaws, I thought I'd pull one out. And this is, you know, if you're wanting to step up to something with a little better performance, not the Damascus, but there's a Kershaw Knockout with 14C28N blade steel, and that's a great knife. Okay, so and about twice the price for that. Okay, so there you go. Those are a few comparisons for you. Not all of them are exactly direct comparisons that are offering kind of the same feature, but certainly the Rat 1 and the CQC 10K and the Lateralis would all be very close comparisons with similar performance and similar purpose in design. All right, so overall, guys, I think this is a cool design. I definitely like the blade shape. I think it's doing something a little different and interesting, and I like that Kershaw is allowing us to get our hands on something like this for a very budget price point, okay? This was cheaper than, or this is cheaper than just about all of the comparisons I showed you, with some minor exceptions. And, you know, something like this is only $5 more, or, you know, and this would be about the same price. So anyway, the price point is very good. The construction is fine. I have no issue with the construction other than wishing they dropped the stainless steel liner here. The ergos are good, okay, not maybe amazing. Again, the jimping could have been a little bit sharper, but overall for $35, this is a very good, capable budget EDC knife that offers an interesting alternative to a lot of the more typical budget knives. You know, your Rat 1, your Tenacious, even the Cut Jack. Although it's a good knife, there's nothing spectacular about this design. This is definitely, you know, got a little more character to it and a little more visual interest for sure. So that's always nice to see. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you like this knife, guys, I don't think you're going to go wrong in picking one up. There's certainly nothing that would say that stands out to make me say this is a knife to avoid or anything of that nature. It's very good for the price point. I can't really complain too much. Hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will talk to you soon.